Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Way of God's Remembrance with Michael Hayes. This is presented by Awake to Love. I'm Lee here with Cindy. We are the volunteer Zoom hosts and so grateful that you are here. As a way of introduction, I will read Michael's words to bring clarity to the focus and format of this gathering. This is a weekly gathering for those seeking greater awareness of their true nature. There are many paths and approaches to higher consciousness and to greater awakening to who we truly are. The essence, the truth of all these paths is more about remembering who we are and have always been rather than becoming something different or more than we have seen ourselves to be. A way of God's remembrance goes to the heart, to the intention of all the paths. This is what we will explore each week. Michael will share thoughts and awarenesses that come forward as relevant and purposeful for our time together, followed by questions and answers related to what he shares about. We will begin with an invocation of light to help support us all to be in collective alignment. After the light invocation, we will play a recording to lead us in Anai Hu chanting. And now I am giving the power to Ron to unmute himself. It has been done. Ron will lead us in the light invocation.
Thank you, Lee. I'm glad to know I'm a good unmuter. Lord God of all creation, we come before you this evening with great joy in our hearts as we step into a time where we seek guidance to how to move forward in the political arena that we are all involved in. Lord, we ask for your guidance that thy will be done, for we know that it is your guidance that is most important. For this time together, Lord, we give our thanks. So be it.
Welcome, everyone, to A Way of God's Remembrance. It's so nice to be with you. I can see some of you, and but I welcome you all. So I guess this is our 26th class, half a year. Our class or call, I guess a Zoom call, whatever we call this. And I'm grateful to be able to share with you and to have been able to share with you for these last 6 months this great calling that is with me every day to support and to contribute to the awakening or to the remembrance of consciousness on this planet, particularly for those amongst us on this planet who are really ready to come awake, to know and experience the truth of the eternal togetherness we share with God and the oneness of God that is our truth and that integrates us with all reality. There are so many different forms within reality and so many different stories of what reality is. But beyond all these, there is truth, and that truth is love. And that truth is the one purpose and one movement of the spirit, always into the togetherness in the truth of God. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon us all and moves through us all as we allow it. But our allowing of it is not really so much of an effort or an accomplishment for us. It is a surrender. It is a release of struggle, a release of the agendas of our personal nature, the agendas of becoming, the agendas of achieving and accomplishing and standing out or standing forth as a particular manifestation, representation of life, of God. There is inherent within the form of all of us as we take on form to aspire to this and to feel incomplete without it. And yet, for those who do attain it in the world, there is a reward in that. And that reward satisfies the ego and then drives the conscious to seek it again and again. But for every consciousness, there will come a time when the pursuit of that reward, the pursuit of being special, will start to collapse. And it's hard to say what brings that about because it could be different things for different people. But the collapse of that agenda will take place. Mostly it seems to be because underlying all that, there's this knowing of truth, and that knowing of truth that's beyond the pursuit of specialness starts to emerge more and more as a knowing, as a conscious truth that moves in the consciousness, moves in our awareness, and its movement within our awareness modifies our approach to living. And it's almost like that drive in us to become starts to meet up with its polar opposite, a drive to be undone. That drive to be undone is really a drive coming out of the spirit, a spirit that is ready to call back into itself, that part of essence that is always part of itself, but has been, in a strange way, not lost to itself, but distracted from itself, which is the basis of our personal agendas. But through it all, there is this essence that is of God, and it will pull us back into itself. And that is the undoing. the freeing of ourselves from the drama and the trauma of this dramatic pursuit. Along the way, that drive to become serves a greater purpose of God. And the seeking of to fulfill that, it drives the conscious to explore and to experience and to behave in different ways and to take on mannerisms, take on approaches to living that are like a great experiment to see if somehow we can gain the satisfaction that we seek in one different form or another different form. All of this will start to collapse eventually for every consciousness. I'm offering to you the truth that I've discovered, that that opportunity is always at hand if we will make ourselves available to it. And it's a surrendering of the ambition, of the drive, of our allegiance to the call of the world, and an opening to that call that comes from God. The call that is in and of the timelessness of spirit, all that comes from the silence and the truth of God in the most high state, in and through every dimension of manifestation. The manifestation we know is tangible, and the manifestations of God that are intangible. It can only be differentiated through a knowing rather than a experiencing the way we think of experience. But eventually, this call of God will move in us and take us. And the taking of us, it takes the truth of us and extracts it from the pretense of us. And that extraction from the pretense of us can create a great crisis in consciousness for that which has pretended to be us for so long. We'll cling desperately to its fabrication. But no matter how intensely it tries to hold on, the greater truth of our nature and the greater truth of God's purpose in extracting itself, like a pearl being extracted from the clam. It's always been there. And through the stress and the friction, the participation, that contained limited reality, process happens. It creates a gain in consciousness. And then the spirit that set the whole thing in motion calls back to itself that part of itself that has now been fashioned into that pearl of great price. Each of us has this, and each of us is this. It's not something that can be explained or defined or described, but it is the truth. It is something known to all in the remembered state and forgotten by many who play the game of time and space. There was a messaging brought forward about this long ago, like a first intent to the return into God of all that was extended out of God. And that messaging can be known and heard again and connected to again as we connect to what we often refer to as the sound current, or the audible word, or the word made flesh. It has within it this call that summons. And it summons each of you now into its truth. It is a miraculous thing. It is given to every and all consciousness to partake of it, to know it, and to surrender to the truth of oneness with it. It is offered to all of you now. Not because I say so, but because it does so. It opens the door of perception, and it opens the heart of reception. So answer that prayer. Inside of me, I hear the voice saying, "Oh, Father, I receive." And it is that receptivity that opens the door to this full remembrance. Everyone is looking for the same truth. One day, everyone will surrender their agendas and their dilemmas, and then will realize that that truth has been looking for them, and they will be found, and they will be saved from the distraction, the distortion, and the suffering of the land of forgetfulness. Bless you all. Thank you for participating here. That's what I had for us for now. I'm going to send it over to my beloved friend Lee. He's going to share a little bit with you, and then we'll open it up for some questions if anybody has anything they'd like to ask about what we've been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. That was just fantastic. For half a year, it was like everything in that succinct, eloquent sharing. I want the recording to hear it again and again and again. Thank you. I am going to share guidelines for questions. That's what I'm going to share. Questions are to be about a way of God's remembrance and what Michael has shared. To ask a question, please raise your Zoom hand. You can find that by hovering near the bottom of your Zoom window. Click on the React button. A pop-up appears. Choose Raise Hand. Please also turn on your video for full participation. If you are in a low bandwidth connection and are unable to, so be it. Most important, and since so many of us have had the blessing of working with Michael over so many years for assistance in clearing so many things, this is not that. Please do not ask questions of a personal nature, and do not ask Michael for assistance in clearing. Questions are to be for your benefit, the benefit of those of us gathered, and those who will participate via the archives. We ask that you look to the integrity of your intentions before asking a question of Michael, and thank you for your cooperation. Finally, I will share the legal consent. By raising your hand and asking questions of Michael, you are giving full consent to Awake to Love to make the audio and video of this gathering, including your sharing, available as online archives for anyone to access. Please do not raise your hand and do not share unless you are in full agreement. Thank you. Michael, we have manifesting hands.
Hmm. Oh, I see only one hand, but it looks like a good Donna Edwards Goldman, England. I'm guessing you're in England, and England isn't your last name, but if it is, it's still cool. Pretty cool.
Hey, Michael.
How can I
Um,
support you?
hmm. First of all, bless you. I have received so much value out of these Zoom calls. often. Yes, I've moved to England. I lived in Southern California my entire life, and 6 months ago, bit the bullet and came over here to be with my beloved partner.
Hmm.
And it's just been joyous. But it is 2:30 in the morning. Um, the timing of what you just spoke about. My question to you is, my current circumstances are such that I find myself really, without my intention, like getting out of my own way to really feel and be led by God, spirit, universe, whatever, more and more and more and more and more. And I've had the most challenging last 10 months of my entire life. So, my question to you is, what action steps or how can I best support myself in leaning more fully into this remembrance, this remembering? Because I keep forgetting, forget, remember, forget, remember, forget, remember. So, if you have any just suggestions on how I can more fully, ah, yeah, I don't know. Is that clear?
Yeah, I think I understand. I mean, that forget, remember has been my journey for a long time. I remember coming into a lot of tremendous remembrance and thinking, yeah, there, I got it. And finding out, oh no, you have no idea. You got the first part. And then seems like almost day after day for, let's say it's been, I don't know, maybe 17, 18 years, just coming to that remembrance more and more. And then suddenly I can't quite find it all. The neat thing about it is then when we go and deal with whatever was in the way of the remembrance, when I dealt with it, it was even more remembrance.
Mm, mm.
So when it says every knock becomes a boost and every stumbling block becomes a stepping stone, I found that to be very true. I'm going to speak a little bit into your own karma and then we'll try and extrapolate to the bigger lesson. I'm doing that because I have to follow the flow, what the spirit gives me. So they've mentioned several times that one of the karmas that you work with in this lifetime is the karma of having been a doctor. And
Oh,
and that I see why they're saying that. So out of that karma as a doctor, you created this idea that your purpose was to serve the world and do for the world, which is makes sense for a doctor. Um, but in that lifetime, you got locked into the ideal of doing more for the world. Being locked in the idea of doing more for the world works against you giving up being the one that does more for the world. You say this because you didn't understand that. Um, where you want to come into remembrance, the way we get into remembrance is we free ourselves from the illusion of self. We free ourselves from the illusion of individuation. That's when remembrance really happens. And this remembrance of our oneness with the one that is, the oneness with God itself, the oneness with spirit, the oneness with Christ, the oneness with the mystical traveler, the oneness with the angels, the oneness with truth. This is what it's about. Many times when we're first into creation, we will in service to the purpose of coming in, we will dive into experience. And as we dive
Hmm.
into experience, we will experience the world from that individual perspective. And for many, many lives, the reward of that will come to us when pain or pleasure, in disappointment and success and satisfaction. But just by experiencing, we will get references of what it's like to exist in a time and space world.
Okay.
So as we do this, there starts to be a progression that happens in our consciousness. That progression of consciousness is we start to learn to make wiser choices. So we're learning to make wiser choices for ourselves to create a better, more favorable outcome for ourselves in our experience of life. We could describe that as what it's saying is that this creation in time and space is a magnetic condition. It's a place where cause and effect works, where karma is what attracts. We're drawn and attracted to certain things. We're repulsed by other things, which is just negative attraction. And we're working our way through these attractions, and we're dealing with the great challenges and dilemmas of having choice. What happens as we learn and grow, we get wiser in our choosing. In the process of getting wiser in our choosing, we start to choose, let's say it like this, to work with higher magnetic energies, and let's say magnetic energies that would be more to our gain, more to our advantage, more to, which in a sense, magnetic fields that would tend to move us more and more to work in our higher chakras. See, the lower chakras are all about the self. So our root chakra is about the self of survival. So its keywords are certainty, stability, safety, and security.
Hmm.
When we get up in the second chakra, and the words are stimulation, sensation, adventure. There's one more, kind of like novelty. And then we get to that third chakra, and it's about me still, but it's about me in relationship to we. So how I fit in with others, how others are going to see me, perceive me, accept me, embrace me, reject me. Then in the heart chakra, we start to bridge into the we. So we start to think more than just beyond ourselves. We start to think about ourselves in, in, in connection, relationship to others. So we've now evolved into the we. So if we looked at the world as offering these different options, there's going to be options. They're going to call us more in relationship to our lower chakras, and options that'll call us more into the higher chakras. But these are all still things we could see as magnetic, meaning of the world. Now, of the world means not just of the physical world, but of the psychic magnetic worlds, which includes the astral plane, the causal plane, the mental plane, the etheric plane, these different planes of reality. And so we are progressing, we're evolving through all these lives, and we have so many lives, where gradually we're getting more and more aligned and open to higher magnetic fields that tend to activate more the higher chakras, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the third eye, the crown. And even those more ephemeral, unseeable, at least to the physical eye, or even to the psychic eye for most of you, chakras above that. But these are still bring us to interact and be in relationship to magnetism. So that's our progression. Now, when we really want to come into remembrance, it's the whole process of this progression starts to fall apart for us. Why does it fall apart? Because no matter how long we do it and how hard we do it and all the different things we try, somehow there's always something missing. But it takes us a long time to figure that out. Kind of have to almost sample most of everything, if not everything, before I realize it's not here. it's like one of those Where's Waldo big puzzles, and you're looking
Yeah.
around, and
Yeah.
it's almost like you spend forever and there's no Waldo. Something goes, and the frustration of the whole process calls something just sort of lets go inside, and the realization hits us that it's not here. The thing that I need, that I long for, that's calling me, that I'm incomplete without, is not in this. It's not in the magnetism. Where is it? Well, it's in the non-magnetic. It's in a reality that isn't magnetic. And so,
Ah.
so our remembrance is to get into that non-magnetic and to give over to that non-magnetic. However, to give over to that non-magnetic, we have to start to free ourselves from our attachment to the magnetic, and more than that, to our identification with the magnetic. Identification with this form and its story, but also identification with all the magnetic fields that we've interplayed with through all these existences. And so as the
Wow.
conscious starts to wake up and become more conscious, when we're evolving, we start to realize, no, I don't want to be a cannibal, and no, I don't want to be a vampire, and no, I don't want to murder people. And so we're releasing ourselves from these magnetic fields that would help us, in a sense, be successful with those approaches. And then we start to get, in a sense, what we think of as higher, because we're dealing with these higher magnetic fields. And so there's an altruism often to those. By working with that magnetic field, I'm now kinder. By working that magnetic field, I'm now more intuitive. With working that magnetic field, I'm now wiser and understanding how things work. Working with that magnetic field, I'm now more empowered to manifest in the world to get more of what I want. With working with that magnetic field, I'm more more available to my fellow man. I'm more altruistic. I am more conscious of wanting to do good for others and to make a positive difference in the world. I'm more aware of the needs of others and the needs of the world. See, these sound so beautiful and spiritual. Well, they have a beautiful component to them, but they're still often magnetic fields. So, what word would summarize non-magnetism? Love,
Right.
loving. Loving is non-magnetic, and the spirit is non-magnetic, and the soul is non-magnetic, even though it has extended itself into this condition and in, engaged and intertwined itself, in a sense, in magnetism to have the experience of the magnetism. So in your case, you very got caught in the altruistic save the world mindset. And that's why they brought that up. In your case, they said to speed this up for you, just realize you're not that doctor anymore.
Okay.
Because it was a long story, but everything I wasn't going after to help you clear that, but you can clear it anyway, because it was really mostly as a way to give this explanation to everybody to understand this greater dynamic of what's really going on. And so that calls you, that which is the spirit itself, is a non-magnetic truth as extending into this condition. And in extending this condition, it's opening doorways into the non-magnetic. Now, with the coming of Christ and Jesus's action of opening that door and establishing it here, this is available in a much greater way, in a much easier way than it ever was before. But it always was there, and it wasn't unavailable. It was just very difficult to get to. But in this day and age, it's quite available, and you are called and invited to that truth. So this world doesn't need saving. From a spiritual vantage point, it's already saved. It's just catching up to that. Once the action of the Christ unfolded here, it's set in motion the shift of the planet from being controlled and dominated by karmic law into a place where the opportunity of grace and the opportunity of forgiveness would become more and more the dominant theme, and eventually be the dominant truth of the planet. And that is because that has already been set in motion. See, in a strange way, the truth is it's already done. But because we're playing in time and space, there will be a time and space process before it becomes accomplished so that all those in time and space can track and reference it and understand it as, oh, it started with this, then it became that. In truth, that isn't the truth. In truth, it is done because it is so, because God has willed it so, and God, in willing it so, made it so. But everybody in their consciousness is still catching up to that truth. That's why John Roger will say the blessings already are. And
Right,
Jesus,
right.
the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And all the masters bring that message. Those masters that bring that message most clearly, we nowadays are calling travelers, to use a terminology that John Roger used. Now that works better for our minds because it gives us the idea, well, it's helping us leave this place where we're asleep and go in that place where we're awake. But in a sense, that's not really true because we're not really waking up into a different place. We're just waking up to the truth. And the truth is we're always one with God. Now you know this in the essence of you, and you even knew this in sort of moments in that other life. But you kept being pulled away from it by this feeling of obligation
Mm,
to go and fix the world.
mm-hmm.
So that's my clue.
Wow. Wow. God bless you and thank you so much for that.
All right, bless you, Donna. It's Ronaldo.
Michael,
Yeah,
before we continue our sharing, please, may I have just a few moments to share some new information with the participants?
sure.
Thank you. Our 26th gathering, for months and months and months, we've been placing into the chat some information, and I'm aware that our chat is not very active, which seems so wonderful to me because who wants to be doing this in the chat when the wisdoms are available here? So it seemed important to share this with everyone as a way, as an opportunity for those who are called completely voluntary to support Michael's great generosity. And we've set up a very easy pathway if you would choose to make financial donations to Awake to Love. So just a quick overview for you. I'm going to read this. Your voluntary donations, small and large, sustain this free gathering and the email newsletters, allowing us to continue sharing spiritual teachings that benefit individuals and the community. And so the easy pathway, first I'm going to show you the link to this. The link we had been putting into the chat was one of those go on forever complex links. Here we go. Awake to Love. I love the name awaketolove.com/donate. That's it. 24 hours a day. Maybe you come back from SEs. Maybe you're out for a walk, just so touched by the spirit, and in that moment, inspired to make a donation. So that link will take you to a very, very simple page. We are using PayPal. It is ultra secure. That link lands you on this page. And the one thing that I wanted to point out, the gold color area that says donate with PayPal, that is only for those of you, which is probably the minority that have PayPal accounts. Below it, it says donate with debit or credit card. You simply click that link. it opens just one other user-friendly page where you can make a donation of any amount that gets charged to your debit or credit card. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. I'm going to put the awaketolove.com/donate link into the chat. So there'll also be a place you can see it and copy it if you choose. Thank you so much, Michael, for the time for that. And we have 3 hands raised. There's Rinaldo, there's Richard, and Beckett has a flesh color hand raised, disappearing a little into the background. And Tony has also raised her hand. So over to you, Michael.
Well, let's do Ronaldo since I already called him. Let's see what we got.
Yes. Can you hear me, Michael?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for calling me and thank you for this space, wonderful space. Um, Obviously, I haven't been here many, many times, but whenever I'm called inside to come in, like tonight, so it's like right place, right time, right message, right everything. I love what you were sharing about the collapse of the agenda. I thought that's right on. Check. And then surrendering of ambition and drive. Correct. Click. And so I'm not necessarily asking for myself because as I understand it, it's a collective process. But in terms of all of us who are in a similar space, one of the concerns for me, which may be for others as well, and however you answer that for the highest good is fine with me, is the area of 10% concerns, the areas of self-trust about this as I'm walking in the invisible stairs, and sense of responsibility. It's like, well, I am somewhat responsibility for this. So there's, and maybe to some degree you answered that to some degree with the person before, but that seems to be like, let's say, areas that are those are also fishes in the swimming pool uh, or the ocean that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's kind of inevitability while we have physical form. The opportunity is to come into the remembrance. And as you come into the remembrance, it may be something you will actually experience, which is this remarkable thing that as you're living and dealing with the 10% with the worldly things, you will simultaneously be aware of yourself as a spirit form that is living through you and is learning through you, is totally neutral and beyond the process you're in, but is also totally permissive of that process. And if you can get that, that will give an elevation to your participation in the 10%. That is possible. You can come into that remembrance, and that remembrance will give you an elevation. You will simultaneously be in it, but not of it. Now, what I'm describing to you is not something you become. It's something that's always so. It's happening right now for every being. God is doing all of this. God is not simply the architect of all this. God is infused into every aspect of our existence and our being and our expression. There's nowhere God is not. So it's much harder to be in that experience and that knowing of that oneness of God and still be doing the 10%. But then that's kind of the mastery. If I can do this 10%, simultaneously know that the Father and I are one, and the Father does Father's work through me, in that I have overcome the world. Overcoming the world is not being totally unaware of it or immune to it or unaffected by it. It's that I've overcome the world's pull upon the truth, on my consciousness to distract from the truth, from the remembrance that the Father and I are one, that God and I are partners, that this is an action of the divine, learning and loving and living through this and allowing a level of identification with this, which creates an attachment to this, an identification with this form, desires, ambitions, fears, allows for all that. The God that we are, the truth of spirit that we remember ourselves to be, has no judgment of any of that, totally allows all that. The game of the world says you have to overcome all that, overcome those fears, overcome all those things, in a sense, to earn the right to be in remembrance. Well, that's not true. Because that we remember is always so. Yes, it does serve us to do things to support that remembrance and to not feed those things that are the most easy or most powerfully distracting things. But beyond all that, this remembrance is eternally present. See, there's a statement that John Rogers used to say, which was eternally traveling consciousness, ETC, etc. And we always took it as called, oh, keep going higher, there's more and more and more and more. And that really works as an incentivization for us to keep letting go and letting God, because that's, in a sense, that's how that higher is experienced. But eventually we will find that God is that eternally traveling consciousness. But that eternally traveling consciousness that is God is not just like going up into the subtler and subtler. It's also extending into the denser and denser. And it's extending into parallel realities, and it's extending through all universes, and it's extending itself into the creation of new avenues to explore, new creations, new realities. So it is a multi-dimensional, but also multi-directional consciousness. This is the truth of all of it. And it's something we come into the remembrance of. Understanding it won't give it to you. Knowing it will do it. Knowing it is just come into the experience and you'll know. And of course, then the understanding will start to come. So the game here that catches a lot of us is we start to realize, oh, there's something more, but I'm too distracted by the world. And the world says, yeah, you have to give up all interest in the world, all any attraction to the world. And so then we, in a sense, strangely, that invites us to go against the world. But see, anything we go against, we're bound to. And so we actually get trapped by the asceticism, by the self-renunciation, by the self-flagellation, by all the things we do in denial of that nature. We think we'll get free of this lower nature we think about here by just focusing on the higher nature. And in a certain way, it's true, but ultimately it's a falsehood. The ultimate falsehood is, it's like saying, I'm going to live in such a way that I get rid of all the bad karma and I'll just have good karma. Yeah, but good karma is still karma. Real freedom is no karma. And the no karma comes by coming into that fullness of the precepts that John Roger talked about that are essential. First law of spirit is acceptance. So you accept what's going on. The second is we cooperate with it. All right, we work with it. Then this understanding starts to appear. We get, oh. And then we bring the loving, we touch to the loving that is our truth, which generates an enthusiasm because it sees the value in all of it. And so that enthusiasm pervades it all. In this way, this greater togetherness of God and spirit becomes ours. Or more accurately, we become its. So I can talk about this. But while I talk about it, I can see the spirit offering the truth of this to everybody. It's like something else knows this. We're just getting reminded. Thank you for your question. Bless you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. I'm going to call on one more. It's Tony.
Hello, Michael.
Hello, Tony.
Thank you for calling on me.
Oh, the light was shining on you before we started the class, and I wondered why it was shining on you. Now I know.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let's see if I can condense my inquiry. Why, as a soul, would they choose, or do they choose, to experience the human condition of losing their brain cognition? I really related to everything you shared at the beginning of our gathering about forgetfulness and remembrance, and what spirit was moving my inner awareness to this understanding that maybe it can be a gift if we have some kind of dis-ease or disease in the human condition where we lose our brain cognition and where maybe we're coming into full remembrance. So if you could shed some light and maybe some insight and inner light on that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, it can be different reasons at different times in different situations. And certainly there are times it's a karmic thing where somebody goes through that because they lacked acceptance of it. So they go through it to have that experience. There's plenty of people that have lost a lot of cognition here that are having more of their consciousness working in other levels of consciousness. And so the diminishment of the conscious here allows more of their, let's say, their energetic and their solar conscious to be available to work on other levels of consciousness. So there's that. There are many people who will experience this as they get more in touch with the spiritual. It's harder and harder to operate here in the normal way we think cognition should work, particularly in the area of memory. There's somebody in this group here I know is going through this right now, and spiritually the person is ascending into extraordinary places in the spirit world. But it seems like the more they ascend in the spirit world, the more the memory goes away. Is that always the case? No, but there's often a degree of that. You see this with a lot of people to a lesser degree of that. For myself, I had an experience about, I guess it's about 31 years ago now, I remember that, of a very spiritual experience happened to me at a seminar training called The Living in Grace. seminar. And when I had this experience, I left my body. It was strange to say I left my body. I went into the spirit. I was still aware of the body. I just couldn't speak or move. I was like immobilized. I was just gone. But there was part of me aware of the body, but I was also aware I was in spirit. And when I came out of that experience, I felt wonderful, but it wasn't too long. I probably within minutes, I suddenly realized something was different. What was different was my memory was drastically changed. Now I was somebody that had a really exceptional memory. My father had photographic memory, and mine was where I probably could have gotten it to that if I'd worked at it. He kind of did work at it, but his was photographic. But I never had to write anything down because I remembered everything. That was all gone. Flip side of that is the spiritual reality became very, very available. I would say I was very intuitive before that. But after that, I had this knowing, just another dimension of the spirit. So that's an experience I had. Now, people that know me realize I have very, very little memory. My teacher, John Roger, recently in a recent tape I was listening to, he talked about it. He said, well, the soul has no memory. In soul or above, there is no memory because everything is now. So we have so many different people and so many different levels that some people are just, it's the natural byproduct of the way they've lived, what they've eaten, and the toxicity they put in their body. And now they're dealing with a decline, which will eventually lead to their passing. And they're having to deal with the consequences of it and having to deal with the experience of it. This is one of the experiences that is very normal for us as human beings to go through this cycle of coming out of the helplessness of baby to infant to little child and go up through that. And then it's almost revert back to it. So we're kind of used to it. But in this time, we're seeing a lot more of it since people are living longer. We're seeing also a lot more of this cognitive problem. Now, it's interesting when the baby comes into this world is very strange and unfamiliar to it. The spirit is very vivid to it. And in getting more and more available to this world in terms of being able to control the body and move the body, but also to talk and to process and interchange and understand the dynamics here. What happens in consciousness is that baby gets less and less aware of where it came from, the spirit. So newborns almost always, when I look in their eyes, they're looking back at me from spirit. It varies somewhat, the degree of it. Sometimes it's startling.
I've had that experience recently, Michael.
Yeah.
How can I better approach someone in the physical form, but in the consciousness of a soul, align with the consciousness of a soul within myself and within the other person so that we can further transcend as a soul?
Well, let's take that word transcend as a soul, because the way you said it is describing an approach which says that the idea that the soul's purpose is to transcend. Eventually, there is a transcendence of this involvement. But initially, when the soul comes in here, the great miracle is that God is somehow able to extend itself into this time-space game and then get that part of itself that's extended in the time and space game to go into a forgetfulness that it's God and get caught into the individuation. So for a lot of people, it isn't their time to quote really transcend. It's still their time to experience. But for those who are at that place where that transcendence is an opportunity or an option. Instead of using the word transcend, support them and support yourself to come into greater remembrance of what's really going on. See, if you look at the idea that, the earth is a school, I love that from the University of Santa Monica. And the idea, the goal is to graduate. Well, we've got all sorts of souls here that are in a different part of that progression. We've got kindergartners, first graders, and we've got college students and graduate students. So the dynamic for every soul of that which would be progression in its purpose, we can use the word transcendent, transcending towards its next grade, if you like, will be different. But for the vast majorities of souls on this planet, it's not their time. This is not that time. They'll finish it for all time. For some, it is, but for a lot, there's a lot they still want to learn. And if we actually somehow could push their progression or their process, that if something became their time for the last life, they would probably fight us on it. You'd say, well, because they're resisting God. No, it's because they're resisting you, or they're resisting something that isn't right for them, because to fulfill their purpose for God, they are meant to truly explore and experience this creation. And to do that adequately, they might need another 100 lives or another 1,000 lives. And so if we're trying to, in a sense, put that upon them, there'll be a pushback because it's not their time. It's like they're, in the great school of life, they're, a junior in high school or senior in high school, and they're all about thinking about the prom and dating. You want them to think about soul transcendence. But the soulic energy within them will not activate to the truth of that the way you'd like them to activate the truth of it, because they're not ready. If you're somebody who is ready for that, and it does activate, that's great. Then you do exactly what you would like to do, which is you just connect with them in that soulic truth. By connecting to the soulic truth in you, you automatically have access to the soulic truth in everyone. You may have to mock it up at first and imagine it, but just do that and just connect to them and talk to them from that soulic place and invite them to greater recognition of that truth, that they are also soul.
Or one last inquiry. So for someone that their Parkinson's has affected their brain, and they're alternating from forgetfulness and remembrance,
Mm-hmm.
are they more so, as they journey on that path, more conscious that they're God looking, and like the God looking within me,
Yes,
and the
they
God
are.
looking?
They are, but they may not be conscious in the way that how to say it. They'll be more conscious of another aspect of God than this aspect of God. Eventually, they'll come conscious, and to that level of remembrance will they become conscious as God. But they'll be closer to be in that remembrance of the consciousness as God than they were. See, first they'll be more conscious, let's say, in the astral plane, which diminishes their awareness here. See, when we soul travel, we're kind of doing that all the time, especially when people begin that process. There's sort of, we talk about as going out of the body, or soul traveling, or they go into meditation, they go into another dimension, they have dreams and these other levels. But mostly, consciousness has the capacity to sort of be mostly aware of this and maybe a little awareness of that. But then it goes into that. Now it's mostly aware of that and maybe a little aware of this. But that process will continue till you start to come into the real remembrance. When you come into the real remembrance, then there will be this knowing of the divine, the knowing of God. And in that knowing of God, when you really have that, you can simultaneously have awareness of all of it. But you don't have the awareness of it, all of it as the singularity of the soul. You have it, the awareness of all of it as the oneness of spirit that interpenetrates it. So from the spirit, you can have simultaneous awareness of all the dimensions. Now, to know what's going on in a particular one, you might shift a little bit inside to focalize on a little more, but you kind of know it's all there. You would have an experience of it.
Thank you, Michael, for allowing this time with me.
Oh, you're welcome. You have great love for somebody there. I can sense it. And there's a spiritual bond there that you should really let yourself rejoice in that. I understand there's both a deep completion of something going on there, but also an honoring of a agreement that was made long ago in spirit about a companionship in the process of awakening to God.
It's my brother-in-law.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you for this time, Michael.
Bless you all.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure we're past time. I've been long-winded tonight, so I didn't get to very many people. Yeah. Ah, one of the things I was going to say were, the thing around the donations and all that. I mean, there was some talk about just charging for the class a minimal amount. I'm always watchful because the more and more I give out to people, if they don't have an opportunity to give back, there can be a movement within their conscious will start to resist receiving, because none of us wants to be indebted. And I don't want people to be going into any kind of indebted consciousness. So, but I like the idea of the donations. And I will tell you, part of the direction we're looking at for all this is we're looking to start a nonprofit foundation. And then this would be part of the nonprofit foundation. So, but that's still in process. And it's just something that's been shown to me in spirit again and again. And just last week, I was shown it again as just part of a direction of service to make available this messaging for those that are ready for it. So thank you again for participating. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to experience your oneness with us and our oneness with you. We're grateful that you brought forward the overpowering love of God to move in us and to transform the resistance inside of our consciousness into a greater platform for us to stand upon and receive the glory of your teachings and the glory of your truth. We open to receive all these blessings through the Lord Jesus and through that consciousness we know as the mystical traveler. We're thankful for those that hold that for us, and we open ourselves to receive all the blessings. We ask, Father, that you bless each person who's participated in this call, who will participate with the archives. They might all receive of this greater knowing that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, that the blessings already are, and that God lives and walks amongst us. And that upliftment and that truth is entirely available in this moment and forevermore. Amen. Bless you all. Thank you so much.